I think we can all agree Alys Rivers is up to something, seemingly trying to force Daemon Targaryen to face his awful behavior from the past. I'm all for that. Ever since George R.R. Martin said Daemon was made of light and darkness in equal parts, I've been interested in seeing some of that light, of which we've seen precious little in House of the Dragon so far. If this is how we get Daemon being a little more caring if we get Nettles, I'm all for this. But what I want to know is why? Why is Alys doing this? In Fire and Blood, there's scarcely any interactions between Daemon and Alys. Whatever her powers, it would seem Daemon Targaryen was immune to them, for little is heard of this supposed sorceress whilst the prince held Harrenhal. Side note, this is the kind of not being faithful to the book I'm okay with. Since Fire and Blood is written as a history book compiled over a century after the events within, a lot of stuff would be lost to history. As it's presented in the show, Daemon is going on these weird acid trips, and anyone who would know about this is later killed by Aemon when he takes Harrenhal. Of course Gildain and any of the sources he drew from when writing this history wouldn't know about Daemon's visions. If I'm correct that these visions are going to soften Daemon so he's not as, evil as we've seen him so far, Alys Rivers has nothing to gain from bringing out the light Martin says is in him. She's in no danger from Daemon. Everyone at Harrenhal surrendered to him. She doesn't need to do this to save herself or anyone here. Munkin and Eustace tell us she was sired by Lord Lionel Strong in his callow youth, making her a natural half-sister to his sons Harwin, Breakbones, and Larys the Clubfoot. But Mushroom insists that she was much older, that she was wet nurse to both boys, perhaps even to their father a generation earlier. Mushroom is cited quite often in Fire and Blood, but I think we are meant to discard almost everything he says, like when Jace allegedly boinks Kragan Stark's half-sister Sarah Snow. I wanted to see that. Well, not the boinking, but House of the Dragon apparently chose not to believe Mushroom's account of Jace visiting Winterfell. But in this case, Mushroom is the one who tells us Alys Rivers is older than she looks, and Gail Rankin, who plays Alys Rivers, says the character is 400 years old and has been at Harrenhal for generations. So it seems Mushroom was more right than the other sources talking about Alys, if Rankin is to be believed. This doesn't explain why she's doing what she's doing to Daemon. All we really know about House Strong in the books comes from Fire and Blood and A World of Ice and Fire, and neither tells us if this house worships the old gods or follows the faith of the Seven. House of the Dragon puts a weirwood tree in Harrenhal, and weirwoods are very old gods. There's a theory put forward by A Song of Ice and Fire YouTubist Joe the Magician that Larys Strong is a greenseer, another old god's thing. I think Alys wants a baby from Daemon. The idea of a prophesied warrior who will save the world and is almost certainly a blending of old gods magic and Targaryen magic is pretty important in this series. It is called A Song of Ice and Fire. One such blending is Bloodraven, Targaryen on his father's side, Blackwood, another old god's family, on his mother's side. Bloodraven is a real piece of work, a kinslayer, which is a big deal in this world, an oathbreaker, and possibly a practitioner of sorcery to achieve his means. He's also my favorite Targaryen. There are theories that the part that he played in the Blackfyre rebellions wasn't just because he hated Bittersteel backing the Blackfyres, but because maybe he knows there needs to be a particular branch of Targaryens some point down the line, and he thinks the Blackfyres aren't it. Maybe he was so willing to go to the Wall and later escape from the Wall because he knows he still had more work to do, which is where we see him when Bran finally meets him in A Dance of Dragons, where he's connected to the Weirwood roots. What if Alys is, in a roundabout way, trying to get Daemon to impregnate her because she thinks this is the way to produce the prince that was promised? Daemon does have a type, and it's ladies who can get him more power, like Laena, a dragon rider who statistically might bear more dragon riders, or Rhaenyra, who gets him closer to the throne. A woman of low birth may not attract the rogue prince's attention unless she breaks him. Then, at his lowest point, she might get in his pants. You may think this is a stretch. She hasn't shown interest in Daemon, but let me explain. Possible spoilers for House of the Dragon if they go the same route of the book, and that's a big if. Daemon eventually leaves Harrenhal, reunites with Rhaenyra. They take King's Landing just as Aemon comes in to take Harrenhal. Aemon kills the rest of House Strong, but spares Alys. After the dance, some knights come to Harrenhal, and Alys announces she has Aemon's son, who should be the next in line for the throne. We don't know this is Aemon's son, but Alys seems to think it is. Or maybe this is just the long con. She wants everyone to think she thinks is his kid. I don't know. We were told before Aemon came to Harrenhal, all of Alys's kids were stillborn, so I don't know how likely it is for her to give birth to a healthy child, but the knights sent by Tywin Lannister seem to think she's telling the truth. This kid's not mentioned in any of the other books, which doesn't sound good for his future. Best case scenario, Alys realized him sitting the throne wouldn't be easy, and they fled overseas. Maybe later in Aegon III's reign, he's given the chance to take the Black, so he won't pose a threat to Aegon III. That's just a guess. If we do get a sequel to Fire and Blood, he will probably be in that. Why Alys decided to tell the world about her kid, to me, that seems pretty dangerous. Maybe she thinks with significantly less dragons than there were before the war, she's safe in her castle. Like Harrenhal were thought so long ago. But again, we never hear from this kid, so whatever happened, it likely didn't go according to Alys's plan. In A Dance of Dragons, Tyrion says prophecy is like a half-trained mule. It looks as though it might be useful, but the moment you trust in it, it kicks you in the head. What if Alys sees the future and interprets it in her favor? Oh, the Song of Ice and Fire. I'm ice if I can just get some fire in me. Oh, Daemon's going back to his wife. Oh well, hey, here comes Aemon. Hey sexy, don't execute me. But look out for that mule's kick. We have other examples of characters who believe they understand the prophecy, only for it to not quite work out that way. Rhaegar Targaryen thought he was the prince that was promised. Maester Aemon's brothers all died of dragon dreams, with Daeron seeing Duncan the Tall slaying a dragon, which didn't exactly happen, but sort of. Maybe there's more to Alys. Maybe the old gods have a stake in how this war turns out, and that's why she's doing this to Daemon. But looking at where she ends up in Fire and Blood, I do wonder if she's acting on her own and has something more personal in mind.